All right, looks like responses come in. And then I will launch a second poll. So this will be for the local regions. All right. So it looks like we've got a nice spread of individuals from across the state. Robin, I'm going to pull up those slides for you here in just a second, and then you can go ahead and get started.
Looks like you got it. Are you
Robin,
ready?
do I have it?
Yeah, it looks like it. If you want to go
Cool.
ahead and start on slide 3, we'll just go ahead and get started.
Start on 3. Okay. Start, so on. Cool. I'm ready when you are, unless there's a different slide that you want me to
I'm not seeing slide 3 pop up on my end, but
Okay, I probably am sharing the wrong screen. My apologies. Okay,
there we go.
how about now? Sorry,
All right.
everyone.
I think we're good. I think we're good. Is that mine's coming out pretty small?
Okay, I probably need to change the monitor it's on, and that should fix it.
We can go ahead and get started. Maybe you can adjust that so that the screen's a little bigger for some. All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Robin Krallman, and I want to welcome you this morning and thank you for being here. If you've been here before for case note training, thanks for returning and getting some additional information, hopefully this morning that'll be beneficial to you. And if you're new here, welcome. And hopefully we both learn something along the way here. So just a brief background on me. I worked in some capacity in workforce development workforce programs for over 22 years now. I started out as a career planner many years ago in local workforce area 23, and then I moved on to trade coordinator for about 10 years. And after that, just did some independent contract work around the state. And so for the past 4 years, I've been a state monitor. So I've got a little experience on both sides. I've worked both sides of the fence through an LWIA and also at the state level. So I see the challenges from both perspectives now. And, you know, let's face it, monitoring can be stressful if we allow it to be. So hopefully, you know, getting through the program today will relieve some of that stress, and you can walk away feeling like you understand what we're looking for as monitors and how you can maintain your files successfully. So I remember every year my supervisor would, you know, share that list of sample files chosen by the state. And I remember hoping not very many of the files were mine. I think everybody kind of feels that way, not because we're doing anything wrong, but just the idea of someone coming in from the state, looking at our files And it just causes a certain level of anxiety, right? You feel that kind of fear or anxiety. So a healthy anxiety about monitoring is normal. We've all felt that. I felt it on both sides working in LW, and actually, as a state monitor, we have some of those anxieties too. But that kind of comes into play when we don't understand what maybe a career planner is trying to say, and we're trying to decipher a lot of things. So we want you to have a healthy anxiety about monitoring, but we don't want you to have a real fear of monitoring, not for any of you. So over the years, I developed some tools that career planners could use to successfully maintain their files and in turn reduce their fear or lessen the anxiety when monitoring came around. And that's what we're going to try to do here today. I'm going to give you some insight from our perspective as a monitor, and also give you some guidance to help increase your understanding of what's required of you as a career planner. So when we monitor, we go through a series of questions looking at your files, and we have just a limited choice of answers. We have yes, no, and non-applicable, and that's it. So the goal is to look at your files and be able to answer the monitoring questions yes. That's what our goal is. So keeping that in mind, let's move forward together. I think it's much more difficult to achieve positive outcomes if you as a career planner don't understand what it is that we're even looking at when we monitor your files. So my approach is let's go in head first together. We're all on the same team. When you succeed, we succeed. And it's really just as simple as that. So I'm going to do my best today to provide you with some guidance and some tools that'll help you be successful in maintaining your files. I want to preface it today by saying we have a combination maybe of attendees today. Some work strictly with IWDS and some work with Illinois WorkNet, and some that use both. So the information I'm going to give you is applicable to both as far as just general presentation. But the presentation itself was really designed for IWDS users, but we'll just kind of improvise along the way if you're working in Illinois WorkNet. So as I go along, I'll do my best to distinguish differences between the two systems. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to talk about the topics of purpose and importance of case notes, characteristics of a well-defined case note, important rules for writing case notes, privacy and confidentiality, the top 3 case note issues, and sample case notes. So let's start off with the purpose and the importance of case notes. So this graphic shows that actual constant cycle as you as a career planner, as you maintain as you communicate with your participants. So there's this constant flow of interactions all the time with your participants. And that information is filtered by you, who then interpret it, translate that information to a written form, and that becomes your case note. So this is when it's critical that you articulate any problems or concerns, document progress towards goals and objectives, to be able to accurately tell the story, because that's what it's all about. Everybody has a story. Next slide. Case notes allow us to do what? Well, the purpose of a case note and what they serve is, number one, again, tell the story. This includes the who, what, where, when, why, and how of your participant's situation. Case notes help build a better understanding of the participant by tracking interactions, documenting referrals, and documenting your decision-making processes in order to support your rationale for your decisions. Case notes help track progress and setbacks by identifying challenges and documenting how you resolved issues with your participant. Linkage to services is important once you identify deficiencies, so you can refer to other partners in services as needed to eliminate or greatly reduce barriers. Increased accountability is also important because it allows for oversight and monitoring, and it's constantly being analyzed by others, whether it's your supervisor, a state or federal monitor, and this is to ensure the participant is being properly served. As career planners, it fulfills an ethical requirement as you are all working in a helping profession, where your focus is on supporting and nurturing the growth of your participants in order to obtain that positive outcome. So your speaking, your listening, your interpersonal and problem-solving skills are all in constant motion. Because you're communicating with multiple participants on your caseload, these skills are critical in developing a good standard of practice when interacting with your participants. Okay, next slide. Let's look in more detail at those characteristics. We can move forward with the next slide. So here's some characteristics of a well-defined case note. The categories here include clear, concise, useful, relevant, and timely. The first one on the list seems to be where we as monitors struggle sometimes. The case notes need to be written clearly enough so anyone reading your case note can understand what is happening to your participant at any given time. Many times, you know exactly what you mean. But when we as monitors review your case notes, and if we don't understand what you're trying to say, that leads us to trying to figure out what we think you're trying to say. And the result of that is our interpretation may be inaccurate simply because the content isn't clear or it's missing critical information as to what you intended to convey. So in the past, I've always trained staff to be as clear as possible when writing their case notes because you never know who's going to be reading them, including a state or federal monitor. You want the monitors to get into your file, find the information they need quickly, and then get out of it quickly. We want the same thing. We want the same thing as you. We want to get in, we want to get out. But if we have to spend extra time trying to figure out what we think you mean, invariably we get distracted by other things and we end up having even more questions. So take the time to fully write down your thoughts in a clear format. Case notes need to be concise in as brief a format as possible. So the information in your case note must be useful. A just the facts kind of approach will serve you well when writing your case notes. They don't need a lot of extra fluff, but they do need to document the who, what, why, where, when, and how of a situation. And the content should be relevant to the situation at hand. If there are other conversations going on with your participant that aren't related to IEP, ISS, only document those parts of the conversation relevant to achieving your participants' goals and objectives. Because we all know that participants come in and they tell you all kinds of stories, personal stories, whether you want to know them or not. It just doesn't belong in a case note. The case notes must be entered in a timely manner. For most participants and situations, regular contact is defined as two-way communication that occurs every 30 days. There should not be gaps in case note entries with more than 30 days without contact between the participant and the career planner or another staff member. So even if you are documenting every 30 days and you have made attempts to contact in your case note, make sure that you're putting documenting all of your attempts to contact, because we also take that into account when making attempts to contact every 30 days. So be sure to definitely record those when you're making attempts to contact. As a reminder, if you're providing a same-day service, your case note must be recorded within 10 days of the service or the activity being completed. So that's really important. That's going to be an ongoing theme as we get through this today. As monitors, we can see by the IWDS and the Illinois WorkNet time and date stamp of your case notes if you are entering them in a timely manner as defined by policy. Okay, next slide. So the required content in a case note, specific details included in each case note will vary depending on the type of activity that's being recorded or your participant situation. So in general, case notes should include very specific elements. The sample in this screen is a scenario of a participant who has not been attending training as required due to childcare barriers. So when formulating your case note, the case note outline should include a description, purpose, content, outcome, and plan. In this particular case, it starts off with a description of the visit. The participant is responding to a request from the career planner to come in for a meeting. The purpose is to discuss her lack of progress in school due to several absences. The participant states she's struggling to attend training because she doesn't have sufficient childcare as her babysitter isn't available due to personal issues. She's trying to make arrangements for a family member to watch her children, but that arrangement has not been confirmed yet. The outcome was that the career planner saw a need and linked her to child care resource and referral to see if she may be eligible for subsidized child care assistance. The plans are to reconnect in a week to verify she has secured childcare with either family or she followed through with filling out an application for childcare resource and referral. So everything we need to know as monitors about this situation is documented. So in a week or so, we would expect to see some sort of updated case note as to how this situation was resolved. So what are we looking for when we're reading your case notes? So many times we see case note documentation about similar scenarios, but so much of the vital information is missing. And the body of the case note may simply say something like, customers having trouble going to school because her babysitter quit. And that may be all that's said in the case note. The thing is, you may have provided services and linkage, but it wasn't documented, which leads us to the famous quote at the bottom of the screen, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So if you are providing services, problem solving, etc., documented in your case note, we have no idea what you did for your participant if you don't write it down. So please, please, please give yourself credit for all the good work that you're doing on a daily basis to help your participants succeed. Next slide. So at a minimum, case notes that document services should answer the following questions in order to meet data validation requirements. What service was provided? What date was it provided? And why were the services provided? For example, if you had a participant, let's say that's failing math, and your case note could say, John is not making adequate progress in his math class. Arrangements were made to receive individual tutoring. A voucher was prepared to cover costs and John was provided a copy. John will attend tutoring every Wednesday at the Career Center at the college for 4 weeks. That tells us everything that we need to know. But if you just put a case note in there and it says John's failing math and it doesn't show any kind of action or service that you provided, we have no idea. Even if you've done it, if you didn't write it down, there's no way that we're going to know that, and it does not rise up to being a same-day service case note if you're not documenting a service. When you provide a same-day service case note, or for a same-day service, you must enter it as a same-day service case note within 10 days of providing the service. And this will be, again, a repeating theme that there's a timeline that you must follow when entering case notes. Okay, next screen, important rules for writing case notes. So let's go over some important rules in the next screen here. Record facts accurately and completely, behaviors you observed and statements you heard. Do not make judgments based on what you observed or heard, and never include opinions, stereotypical comments, or any offensive statements. If you must state an opinion that is relevant to WIOA Title I services, please be sure to label your statement as an opinion. For example, it is the opinion of this career planner, blah, blah, blah. Use clear, simple, concise language, including professional terminology. Don't use slang, cliches, or jargon. Do not comment on details that are not relevant to the individual's participation in Title I services. Keep documentation focused on how events in the participant's life will affect goals and objectives identified in their IEP and their ISS. And do not use discriminating statements, especially on the grounds of race, age, or sex, with the exception of age as it relates to youth participants. And avoid the use of abbreviations and acronyms. Each OWIA kind of has their own set of acronyms for different things. Sometimes we can figure it out and sometimes we can't. So if you can, it would just be easier if we were able to understand that sometimes of what your acronyms mean. Okay, next slide. So this next slide is an actual case note we reviewed a few years ago. And I say this case note because it's such a great example of how we would not want you to document how you interacted with your participant. So as you're reading this right away, in looking at the very first case note sample, we see that Stan is in really big trouble. I mean, his case manager is really, really upset. He obviously is not doing what the career planner expects of him, and she is not happy. So let's take a look. She wrote, had a come to Jesus meeting with Stan today. He needs to better communicate. He needs to provide me with an update by the end of the week. So observe the personal feelings and the feelings of frustration, the religious reference within the content. There's a lot of stuff going on here that really should not be documented. So we're always going to have feelings and emotions. They don't belong in a case note. You can talk to your coworker about it. You can talk to your supervisor about it, but you don't want to get personal feelings and emotions involved in writing a case note. So how can we write this in an alternate way to get the same message across, but more neutral with just the facts just the facts and remove the emotion? So we could say, met with Stan today, discussed concerns regarding delaying completing his training. We also discussed need for regular contact while he's participating in training. Stan reports he has some personal issues to deal with that prevented him from attending his required classes. And just note, we're saying personal issues. We're not telling what the personal issues are. We see that a lot in case notes. It's not necessary to divulge any kind of personal issues. You can just say personal issues. That's preventing him from attending class. We discussed some options of either continuing with training or closing this file until a future date when his issues have been resolved and he's better able to dedicate time and attend required classes. Stan agreed to call and update me on or before Friday, October 2nd. Let me know if he plans to return to training. Okay, so that is all in a nutshell. Everything you want to remember as a career planner and what we want to see when we're monitoring. We see that action has been taken. There's a plan. So unfortunately, Friday, October 2nd, obviously came and went, and there was no communication from Stan. And here's the next case note that this career planner documented. He was not following through, so I dropped him. I would not recommend providing funding for him in the future or proceed very cautiously. That's pretty harsh. You know, she's still mad. We still see a lot of emotion running through that case note. The career planner seems to still be super irritated. So how are we going to remove that emotion from this particular entry and write it in a more neutral, just the facts kind of way? Okay, there's been no further contact with Stan due to multiple delays in training and no message received by the deadline of October 2nd of his plans to return to school. I will move forward with exiting the file. No further services are planned at this time, and I sent Stan a letter today to let him know his file will be closed and to contact me should he desire services in the future. So in these case note samples, we see that personal feelings and opinions are guiding the narrative in these entries. The career planner's frustration is clear, so it's important to remain neutral. So when working with adults and youth, there is bound to be conflict at times. There always is. But when a career planner states he needs to do this or he needs to do that, as it's written in this case note, well, we all know we cannot make somebody do something they don't want to do. We just can't. We don't have that kind of power. That's why detailed case notes are critical to ensure the facts are included to explain potential conflicts that may be developing. A specific plan of action is also necessary to add to the case note to ensure the career planner and the participant are working together to reach a resolution if at all possible. Here's the best advice I can give after years of experience of working with lots and lots of participants. Always remember to believe in the good of people. If a participant is not doing what you expect, do your best to guide him or her back to partnering with you within the boundaries of the program, but always extend grace when you can. And most importantly, recognize the value that you have as a career planner to help make a difference in a successful outcome for your participant. You are truly that important in their journey. You may be the only cheerleader on their side as they're going through training. So it's really important to give breaks when you can, extend grace, and support them in the best way that you can. Next slide. I don't know what that is. There we go. So let's click over to the next slide for privacy and confidentiality. So what happens sometimes when a career planner, in your attempt to tell the whole story, you may inadvertently include information of a sensitive nature. And there are privacy laws in place to protect your participants. So you want to be very mindful to not include sensitive topics on this list within the body of your case notes. Some information will need to be documented for eligibility purposes. There's special grants and things where you may have to divulge certain things that are on this list. However, just be mindful, you're only documenting information required to determine eligibility and not oversharing details relevant to your participant. So on this slide, there are a few examples of subjects not to include. Usually breaches in confidentiality come in subsequent case notes after the intake, or perhaps maybe a divorce is discussed, domestic violence, problems with family members, gambling. We've seen so many things in case notes that don't belong there, but probably the most common breach of confidentiality that we see pertains to medical issues. So in taking just a read down, living arrangements, relationship status, financial status, details of health conditions, psychiatric medical history, evidence of addictions, experience with violence, cultural practices, criminal history, past or current charges or violations of the law, religious beliefs and practices, and gender identity, political preferences. So these are good examples of what not to put in writing. Again, there may be exceptions depending on what type of grant that you're working with. But let's look at this next sample case note. So when formulating your case note, always be careful to not accidentally disclose the medical information. It's okay to make a general statement regarding a medical or a disability issue. Just don't provide specifics about sensitive topics. So summarize the information for the purpose of addressing potential barriers and avoid specific details that could be considered a breach in confidentiality. So let's take a closer look here at this one. Mary called and said she will need to reschedule our meeting on 1/20/2022 because she has a doctor's appointment at the same time as our meeting to treat a severe rash on her body. We rescheduled for next week. Now, did we really need to know that she had a severe rash on her body? No, we didn't really need to know that. So it's not necessary to write that in there. Even though she told you, you don't have to write it. You can say it like this. Mary called and said she would need to reschedule our meeting on 1/21/22 because she has a doctor's appointment at the same time, period. A new appointment was scheduled for 1/28/22 at 9 a.m. So again, even if they tell you personal information, which they will do quite frequently, just don't include it in your case note if it's not relevant to goals and objectives. Next slide. There is an exception, however, in the event that you feel information about a particular case is relevant to your decision-making process when serving the customer's needs. There is an option to make a case note confidential so that you as the career planner are the only one that can view it. This slide shows what your traditional case note screen looks like when you're preparing to enter a case note. The drop-down box next to the confidential line always defaults to no. But you do have the option to change this to a yes if you feel it is necessary to document additional information that needs to be protected. If you are unsure as to whether you should enter a confidential case note, discuss it with your supervisor, make a decision as to whether it's even necessary. And if you come to the conclusion that it is, try to be as brief as possible about the explanation, and always have the protection of privacy in the forefront of your mind at all times. As another side note, you want to make sure that if you do have any kind of personal information related to this list, or anything that you feel would be confidential, it needs to be in a separate folder from your regular file, and it needs to be in a locked environment. So keep that in mind if you have any kind of medical reports, anything like that, that you feel falls under the confidentiality. Make sure that you have that in a separate folder and it's locked up in a medical file and not in the regular file when we come to review. All right, let's move on to the top 3 case note issues. Over the past few monitorings, we've seen a sort of pattern developing across the state in which there are 3 prominent areas of concern regarding case note documentation. The same 3 issues continue to crop up multiple monitorings, at times led to LWIAs receiving findings when these issues were identified. So we're going to try to break these 3 areas of concern down in the next few slides. The first one is significant delays in case note entries and batching of case notes. So the number 1 case note issue is falls around this. It just, if you don't know what batching is, we're going to talk about a little bit. And I'm going to show you an example. It's been occurring so often that multiple LWIAs, so we're going to break it down and try to understand it together. And the first look is the definition of batching. And the definition of batching occurs when a career planner enters multiple case notes into the IWDS system all at the same time for past services performed over a period of many, it could be weeks, months, and sometimes I've even seen years. The date time stamp will reflect multiple delinquencies for case notes not being entered in a timely manner. So batching the case notes is very, very strongly discouraged, as observations of this practice during monitoring may result in programmatic findings. So when we look a little bit closer at policy, it says case notes and file maintenance are vital to quality service and reporting. They reflect the results of continuous career planning in detail, so participant status is easily determined. The case notes for an open active service must document ongoing 2-way communication between the career planner and the participant that describes how the goals how the service moves the participant towards their goals. Again, reminder, case notes must be entered into the appropriate case management system within 10 calendar days of the service delivery, and the regular contact typically 30 days. Let's look at a sample of this batching on the next slide. So this IWDS case note screenshot is an example of delays in case note entries and batching the case notes. So as you can see, the first few entries at the bottom were entered in a timely manner, starting at the bottom on 11/8/2019. If you look at the created column on the far right, you can see that the case note was actually entered 10 days later. So they met that 10-day requirement and they entered it on 11/18/19. The 12/12/2019 same-day service case note is the beginning of when entries start to become delinquent. The same-day service case note on 12/12/2019 was not entered until 9/17/20, over 9 months later. And remember, that's supposed to be entered in there within 10 days. There was no case note entered for the month of January 2020, and the next 4 case notes of 2/20/20, 3/30/20, 4/15/20, and 5/20/20 were all entered on the same day. In other words, batched together on the same day on 9/17/20, reflecting a significant data lag for all of those entries. So when monitoring, we're not only just looking at your case notes, we're also comparing your case notes dates to the actual time date stamp of your entries in order to determine if compliance is being met for entering your case notes within 10 days of providing a same-day service. And also, we're looking to make sure that you're documenting at least every 30 days for general case note entries. So remember I said we're trying to get to the yes answer in our monitoring questions? For example, let's say I'm trying to answer the following question. There is documentation reflecting that meaningful two-way communication is occurring within a 90-day time frame. So how do you think I can answer that looking at this screen? There is documentation reflecting that meaningful two-way communication is occurring within a 90-day time frame. That's going to have to be a big no on this question. And when we answer no to any monitoring question, it triggers a finding. Because remember, you are supposed to be documenting something every 30 days. And if there are no services provided within 90 days, what are you supposed to be doing then? Remember, I want you to always document your attempts to contact. Even if you're not reaching them, you still want to make sure that you're reaching out and attempting to contact. But at this point, if you're getting close to 90 days and you have not provided any services, you either have to, there's only two choices really. You either have to re-engage the customer in services if at all possible, or you move towards exiting. But none of that happened. None of it happened here like that. But I can tell you what did happen. So when we sent the list of samples to the LWIA and this participant name was on the list, the assigned career planner went in to check this file to prepare for monitoring, realized he hadn't entered in meaningful two-way case notes since November 2019. So he hurried and stuck in multiple case notes on September 17, 2020. But you know what? By then it was too late, because when he added these, we can now see that he batched all the notes on the same day just by looking at the time date stamp. So these were so delinquent. So he obviously was not staying in contact with the participant every 30 days or entering in a same day service entry within 10 days as required. Okay, next slide. When we broke this issue down, we're trying to figure out why is happening. You know, why are there so many delays to this? And so on the left, we identified some potential barriers, such as career planners finding the time to complete case notes, work balance, time management. So many of you work out in the field, maybe with youth, OJTs, apprenticeships, whatever you may be doing, and you may not be in the office regularly and find yourself falling behind on getting your case notes completed. But the result of delaying entering case notes for too long most certainly compromises the quality of your case notes, because if you're waiting way too long to enter them, you're not going to remember everything that you did. And so the quality of the case note will diminish. Some career planners do not have an understanding of the time-sensitive requirements for case note entries. You may have never been trained on the 10-day requirement for same-day service or the 30-day requirement for case note entries. Career planner attributes, which is simply your personality characteristics, which influences your desire to succeed at work, to establish good work habits, and the ability to recognize distractions and move them out of your way to accomplish your goals in the workplace. So a lot of it is, you know, personality on how you get your work done. So what are some solutions? If you find yourself falling behind in your case notes and aren't able to enter case notes on a daily basis, which is the best practice, talk with your supervisor, set aside a designated time each week to enter all your case notes from that week's activities. Completing these in a timely manner on a regular basis every week will definitely prevent data lag in your services. Request additional assistance from your supervisor so that you have a good understanding as to what time-sensitive requirements need to be applied when entering case notes. Utilize samples provided by the state as a sample of writing a good case note, and we'll look at those a little later. And also run your reports in the IPAT system within Illinois WorkNet on a weekly basis to help keep your caseloads under control. If you're not familiar with IPATs, It is an acronym for Illinois Performance Accountability and Transparency System, and it can be accessed through your Illinois WorkNet username and password. This system provides the most accurate and up-to-date information for your participants. So the LWIA directors, supervisors, and staff should all have access to IPAT system within Illinois WorkNet and run frequent reports to ensure consistency and quality of services. So if you don't have an Illinois WorkNet account set up already, you will need to do that in order to have access to IPATs. Standing meetings should also be scheduled with career planners to review and discuss strategies that follow WIOA policy in order to increase the efficacy of the program and participant outcomes. All right, let's go on to the next slide. This is a sample screen of IPATs reflecting results for the whole state. And this was a while back when this was run, but these numbers have improved over the last few months, but we still have some work to do. So as monitors, we are constantly looking at the big picture for the whole state to see how well things are going across the board. And when we take a closer look at this, we're looking to see if there's a more systemic issue across the state for case notes not getting entered in a timely manner or services not being provided as required by policy. Because case note delinquencies and lack of services being provided have both been identified during monitoring, we needed a more in-depth training for case notes, and that's what led us to all be here today. The good thing is these reports can be filtered down to just look at your own LWIA, but most importantly for you, it can be filtered way down to look at your own individual career planner reports. So we recommend you run your own individual reports weekly to stay on top of your caseloads. Multiple reports are available for you to run, as you can see in this IPAT screen. But there are other reports besides these that can also benefit you. These are the best tools you have right now at your fingertips to assist you in catching issues early by updating your case note entries in a timely manner to prevent delinquencies, avoid potential data lags, and ultimately prevent findings during monitoring. All right, next slide. Let's go ahead and take a closer look here at the second case note issue, which is the misuse or lack of use of same-day service entries. This is such a struggle for people to get a grasp on. I don't know why, but there's still a lot of confusion around it. So let's talk about the differences between same-day service case notes versus general case notes. So every time you get ready to enter case note, you make a decision as to what type of case note needs to be entered. So how do you do that? Let's look at the definitions. Same-day service. There are staff-assisted activities that are completed in one day. The same activity could be delivered again on one or more additional days, but each occurrence is considered another episode. A general case note are all other activities with the customer or on behalf of the customer that do not constitute a service, and as defined by the goals and objectives of the IEP and the ISS. Next slide. So what are some of the barriers and why is this happening? Some case notes are documented as same-day service, but the case note does not reflect a specific connection to a service or an activity. Other case notes are clearly same-day service contacts, but the case note is entered as a general case note only. Entering it this way prevents IWDS from auto-updating the end date on the service line, potentially causing the participant to appear as if he or she have not received any services at all. Difficulty in determining type of contact, such as same-day service communication versus a general two-way communication case note entry, where case notes are unclear if communication with the participant actually occurred. Sometimes when we look at your case notes, we can't tell if you actually talked to them, how you communicated with them. So it's really hard to make that determination when there's information lacking. Some people have not maybe learned how to enter a same-day service case note. Maybe no one's taught them that. So that has been an issue in some of the areas. And not entering same-day service case notes at all. We've seen that where no one is entering same-day service. They're all general. And that we don't want you to do either, because again, when you're entering same-day services, you are validating that you're providing services, and you're also clicking up that end date in your service screen to show that you are actively providing service. So it's vital that you understand how to enter in a same-day service case note. So what are some solutions here? When services are provided, always enter case notes as a same-day service through the service screen. Use the add additional episode button to enter, and this process resets the end date automatically and keeps the service date current. Use the note subject line to clarify what occurred as to whether it is a same-day service in which service activities were provided or a general entry that was not connected to a service or an activity. Review current state training PowerPoints on Illinois WorkNet, which provide you with step-by-step instructions on how to enter a same-day service case note. And ask for additional technical assistance either from your supervisor, or we can also provide additional technical assistance for local areas if needed. So the following examples do constitute a WIOA Title I service and should be entered as a same-day service case note. This is certainly not an all-inclusive list, but it has several in here of what you would be working at with every day. So on this screen, the following activities do constitute a same-day service. And some examples are completing intake, assessments, testing, development of an IEP, ISS, engaging in two-way communication, which includes discussion of progress, changes, and concerns as related to goals and objectives listed on the IEP or ISS, reviewing class schedules, book list requirements, preparing tuition and book vouchers, verifying enrollment with childcare to assist in childcare and travel costs, obtaining signatures from the participant for required documents, discussing supportive service requests, reviewing requirements and allowable costs, preparing payment vouchers. These are action type things. These are same-day service activities. Reviewing attendance records from the participant for accuracy, then calculating and processing for mileage reimbursement, conferring with the participant to discuss barriers and achieving goals and objectives, providing linkage, job search assistance, job referral, conducting on-site visits for work experience on the job training participants to assess progress as related to goals and objectives, communicating with the participant when conducting 90-day IEP ISS reviews together, and documenting progress and changes as it relates to goals and objectives. These are all action kind of things. These are things you're actually doing with the participant or for the participant to validate and verify that you're providing a same-day service. We're going to skip slide 26, go on to 27. So this list does not constitute a WIOA Title I service nor contact with a participant and should be entered as a general case note. So there's lots of times when you just need to enter a general case note. Here are some samples of general case note: speaking with the participant's relatives, sending flyers, letters, and emails, speaking with the participant's probation or parole officer, having a casual, unrelated to the program conversation with the participant in public, having the participant simply bring in time or attendance records for payment when no meaningful service or discussion or guidance was provided, sending contact me or contact our office's messages via email, postal service, or telephone, regular contact with the participant or employer to only obtain information regarding his or her employment status, educational progress status, need for additional services, or income support payments. There has to be a meaningful service provided. If you're not providing a service, you just enter it as a general case note. And commentary opinions on participants' personal circumstances unrelated to employment or training activities. So one of the most frequent errors we see when reviewing case notes is the attempt to contact kind of case note. and documenting this as a same-day service case note in error. So let's take a look at this next slide. This is a case note sample that we see fairly often with an attempt to contact the participant. So on the right, or excuse me, on the left, this represents how the case note was incorrectly entered by the career planner. Remember, when choosing to use the note category of same-day service, you must actually be providing a service. As we've learned, attempting to contact a participant is not considered a same-day service, as you did not provide any services. When monitors see a same-day service case note entered and the note subject line says contact, we would expect to see that you actually made contact with the participant and provided some sort of service, because that's what you're saying you're doing in the note category and in the note subject line. But as you can see from the case note itself, it simply states called and left message. So that is not a same-day service. That only is to be entered under a general. The correct entry is on the right. What should that look like? Let's look at the right side. And first, you would enter the note category as general, since you did not provide a service. The note subject line would be expanded to state attempt to contact for December 2021, rather than just saying contact, because there was no contact. So write attempt to contact. And the body of the case note would also be expanded to explain the message left. Instead of just saying called and left message, put what message you left. Called Morgan, left a message requesting she returned my call to provide me with an update on progress in school. So see the difference there? Okay, next slide. So the next slide is it's entering in a contact with participant. So the incorrect entry is on the left, where they are entering in is a same-day service, and then they're putting contact as the note subject, and then they're putting client still in school. Okay, that's all it says. So when we as monitors come in, we're looking for some sort of action, because you said it was a same-day service case note, and we're looking for what kind of contact you had, but then you just put client still in school. So we don't know if you just put client still in school or if you actually talked to somebody or how you got that information. It's not clear. But what I can tell you from this particular case note is, because we were reviewing the file and we saw that this person had supportive services provided on this very same day that this case note was entered, it was clear that it was actually a same-day case note would be appropriate because of what they actually did. But again, remember, if you don't document it, it never happened. But in this particular instance, we can see that they actually did something. So this is what it should have looked like based on the services that they actually provided. They can keep it as that same-day service, but the note subject line could be expanded to say school update, March 2021, and request for calculator, because that's what they actually did that day. They just didn't give any credit to themselves for providing any case management like they should have. And then the case note needs to explain what you did. Called and talked to Cindy today about her progress in spring 21 semester. She reports she's current on her homework assignment, maintaining A's and B's in her classes. She has no concerns at this time, but states she will be needing a scientific calculator. A supportive service voucher was prepared for the calculator, and Cindy will come in tomorrow to sign the voucher and take it to the bookstore. She remains on track to complete training and continues making satisfactory progress in her classes. That's what really happened. But the way it was written, the career planner gave no credit to themselves for providing case management, nor did they support the entry of same-day service case note. So that's the difference, is if you're going to use same-day service, you have to show an action or activity of what you actually did. Let's look at the next one here. This is a case note sample of attendance records. So an incorrect entry, they entered in case note as supporting same-day service. The note subject just said update. And then the body of the case note just said received attendance. That tells us absolutely nothing as monitors, because as a same-day service case note, we don't see that any action was taken. Receiving attendance is not a service as it's written here. It's what you do when you receive the attendance, which we're going to look on the other side here on the correct entry. Same day service, the note subject line was expanded for October 21st, attendance process, okay? That attendance process tells a monitor that you actually took action, that there was a service provided, and it justifies the same day case note. And the case note says, just stop by the office, turned in her October attendance record. Attendance record reflects she attended all required classes, completed mileage calculations, and sent form to be processed for reimbursement. Jess continues to progress successfully in training, remains on track to complete her program within the projected end date. Okay, now we can see, okay, that justifies the same day service. You actually provided that service. See the difference? All right, next slide. This is the third issue that we've seen in the top 3 case note areas of concern. And this is case notes that are missing required content, no chronological order to the notes. So case notes lack reason for contact, action taken, progress or plan. There's a lack of order as to when services were provided, intake, eligibility, assessment, testing, determination of services. All of that, so many times, all of that is so much missing in the case notes. So there's no chronological order. You know, as a case manager in the past, and I know you probably all experience this too, you know, when you inherit files from somebody else, it's not always a fun thing, right? I mean, I don't know how many times I've inherited files from somebody else. I have no idea what's going on with the participant. There's just nothing substantial in the case notes to help me even understand where this person is. It's the worst when you inherit files that are not in very good shape. And we see this sometimes with files that have been passed around, but we also see it in just regular monitorings of people that maybe have not been trained on how to accurately and completely give information about eligibility, assessment and testing, determination of services. So there's so many things missing in the case notes sometimes. And this is a good place to just insert this information. I know you probably know it, but there's a few across the state that don't know. When you are in your IWDS screens and you are, summarizing your intake and all of the things that you do when you meet someone for the first time and do those testing and assessments on them, you are supposed to be filling out the assessment summary screen. Because that's where a lot of information we can find on what you actually did for assessment and testing. And some of those are missing. Some LWIAs do a pretty good job of doing all of those screens as required, but they have been required since 2021 for you to fill in the assessment summary screens within IWDS. It's super important that you go back and read that policy on how to appropriately enter information in the assessment summary screen, because if we're not seeing it there and we see it in a case note, we are accepting it, but really it needs to be a happy balance of putting things in the assessment summary screen as required and also summarizing it in a case note, or at least in a case note saying see assessment summary screen for assessment and testing details, whatever you want to say. But if you don't know about the assessment summary screen and you've never heard of that before, you want to make sure that you are reading over that policy together as a group so that you have a very good understanding of the requirements. And it is a requirement that you complete those screens. So like I said, many times there's a brief case note regarding intake, and then suddenly it'll say, maybe customer came in and brought in documentation and wants to go to school for CDL. And then the next case note will say, customer brought in his attendance and is enjoying class. And we're like, where's the guts to it? Where's the meats and potatoes? Where's all the information about how you determined that that person needed to go to CDL in the first place? So you see how important it is when you're putting case notes in order as to what occurred. You did this, and then you did this, and you did this, and putting all of that information together, you came up with what kind of services your customer needed. So you just want to make sure that you're documenting it in both of those places as required. Okay, next screen. So why is this happening? We tried to come up with some reasons why case notes are missing contact. Again, I think it goes back to lack of training on how to properly formulate a case note to include the required components, lack of training on entering case notes in chronological order to validate your decision-making processes of the participants' enrollment in the services, and copying and pasting the same case notes each month. So we just want to talk a little bit about those things. It's a bad habit of copying and pasting case notes over and over and over again, month after month after month. I can't tell you how many times we've seen note subject lines that say contact or update, and that's all it says for dozens of case notes, one right after the other. And they basically just copy and paste and say customer's still in school. Okay, don't do that. Don't ever do that. Always make your case notes individual to the person, and make sure that your note subject line is being descriptive about what it is that you're trying to convey. Another thing that's happening are these monthly copied and pasted blanket letters and emails in your case notes that aren't really applicable. Sometimes LWIS will send out, just mass emails to all of their customers, and everybody gets it no matter what. It sometimes will remind a person to come in and get your voucher for, summer semester, let's say. But they're going out to all of the people, even the people that have already graduated. So when you're sending out bulk emails or bulk letters, just make sure that you are not sending them out to people that have already gone through the program and maybe, graduated and are working. We see that a lot. That's thrown in there, and that throws us off because when we see that correspondence, it doesn't match with the rest of the case notes, because we're thinking, wait a minute, I just read that person graduated. Why are they being sent a letter to come in for more vouchers? So that's just a side note. Just be cautious when you're sending out to everybody that you're not including those participants that is not applicable to. So we spend a lot of time backtracking, trying to figure out what's going on and what you're doing. So from this day forward, just pay attention to it, and then make sure that you're not sending those to people that you don't need to. So what's the solutions here? This is kind of a sample case note using the WRAP method. There's different methods to remember how to convey what you're trying to say. This is a pretty simple one. This one is entered as a same-day service, and the WRAP is R for reason for contact, the A is action taken, P is for plans. So that's an easy thing to remember when you're trying to formulate. So let's go to that next screen, and let's take a look with this in action. And as you can see here, it's entered as a same-day service based on the services provided. And the note subject line is also specific to the services provided. The case note clearly identifies the reason for the contact, which is the participant bringing in his fall grades, and also the participant is in need of a spring voucher for the upcoming semester. He needs a supportive service voucher for a supply. And the action was that the career planner verified all spring classes were on the curriculum and then issued the vouchers for tuition and fees, and also completed supportive services vouchers for the supply. Measurable skills gain entry was completed. Progress for this participant is satisfactory with a GPA of 3.9. Plan is to continue in the HVAC program, and he's on track to complete training within the time period projected on his IEP. So everything we need to know can really be captured in a wrap case note. Next slide. Types of contact with the participant. When writing your case notes, be specific as to what type of contact you had with your participant. Acceptable ways of contacts are phone calls, emails, social media, text messages, in-person contact, virtual meetings. Just let us know in the subject line or in the case note how you are communicating with your participant. That will give us a heads up that you're actually providing two-way communication with your participant. And one more quote, this time from an anonymous lawyer who cautions, dance like no one is watching, but text and email like it will be read in court someday. There's some truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that, actually. When you're using text messages and emails to communicate, just be mindful that you are putting what you're putting out there in the universe, really. All right, helpful hints documenting email responses. This is just a little kind of a cheat sheet in order to preserve emails that your participants send to you. So instead of paraphrasing what a participant's email said in your case note, simply pull up the participant's email, then hit reply. That's the easiest way to do it. This automatically condenses the participant's email down and it to a format that can easily be copied and pasted into a case note. And the time date stamp is already on there. So you don't even have to remember when they sent you an email. It's already on there. It's just a simple hack. You can use it or not use it to make things easier for you, just so you're not retyping an email or trying to paraphrase it. Just an easy way to do it. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to some sample case notes. And I think we're going to move on to slide 38 there. There we go. So there's a lot of requirements in policy about what really needs to be in your case note, especially when you're meeting somebody for the first time and documenting in your assessment summary screens and in your case notes what you actually did with the participant that day. So the first section, an introduction, is a complete description of the status of the individual at participation, including an explanation of their overall need for services. And this case note will elaborate on eligibility, intake, assessment results, and give a clear picture of the individual, their barriers, their strengths and skills, training preferences, and possible supportive service needs. So all of that needs to be documented. It can be documented in a case note, very lengthy. It can be a combination of your assessment summary screen and case notes. It just has to be in there. Determination of training need. The career planner must document the suitability of the training and retraining program with participants' needs. In cases where training and retraining is required for a participant to enter or re-enter the workforce successfully, the training selected must be directly linked to employment opportunities in the local area or the planning region, or in an area to which a participant is willing to commute or relocate. You have to document the training begin date, if they're going into training. A case note must be entered when the participant enters training and is to include the date the training began, the training program, the training provider, the approximate cost, and the planned end date. The training end date, case note must be entered to reflect that the participant's training has ended and include the following: the date training ended, the name of the program, whether the participant completed the training successfully, and the credential or the license status. And service enclosure and exit. Full description of the participant status at exit must be case noted and include employment, non-employment, employer name, hire date, hours, and wage, and any exclusions must also be described. And follow-up, a full description of the follow-up services and information provided to WIOA Title I participants. That's a whole lot of information, but all of that information is required to be put into IWDS. And again, whether you're putting it, all that information assessment summary screen, and you're saying in a case note, see assessment summary screen for details, or you're just doing a combination, just make sure that you're getting the assessment summary screens completed as required. All right, next. So I've created 3 sample case notes for this training, which will guide you on the right path to thoroughly and accurately documenting critical areas that must be included in your case note documentation. So these 3 case note samples are very detailed, and they capture the required content necessary in order to validate your reasons for enrolling a participant in services. So let's take a look at the case note samples below. So we're going to be looking at intake eligibility determination, summary of assessment and testing, determination of services, and development of an IEP. So suggestions for using the samples are to keep a folder on your desktop and refer to these samples when you first begin working with a participant. But keep in mind, these are suggested samples only. So if you want to create your own local samples for these same types of case notes that follow your own local procedures, that's perfectly fine. However, if you want to make sure that the components of the sample case notes in this presentation are also captured in your local samples as well. If you're going to create your own, make sure all the components that are listed in here are also in your samples. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So this is just a general overview of the requirements for an intake and eligibility case note. This case note's critical. It documents registration into IWDS, and it will be reviewed during monitoring and data validation activities. So many times during monitoring, this case note's missing entirely. It's not in the case note, it's not in your assessment summary screen. So we need to get back on track to getting this documented the right way in IWDS. This initial case note must contain the following: why the participants being enrolled in WIOA Title I, what future services and activities would be provided. For adult and dislocated workers, the participant enrolling services, initial assessment, and what other services were provided on the same day of the participation date, such as eligibility determination, overview of Title I program, IEP. And for youth participants, the objective assessment and individual service strategy and the first use element provided. So all of that has to be, the date of the first element provided will be the participation date in WIOA Title I services. So all of that has to be written down in that assessment summary screen. Okay, next slide is the fill in the blank sample for an intake eligibility determination. Again, keep it in mind, if you don't have your assessment summary screens completed, you can review this and you can get your information in there, the requirements in there that you need to meet that requirement for career planners. And you can also summarize this case note. You can use it in addition to your assessment summary screen, and it's simply filling in the blank. Wherever the yellow highlights are, you're going to fill it in. So this is your first sample. And this is a case note for a 1A participant. So as you can see, the format is fill in the blank. So every participant is going to look different. As you can see in reading through the sample, right off the bat, eligibility determination is stated clearly in the first paragraph. And as you read on, you can see that demographics of the participant are provided in the next paragraph, with the next section stating what the customer is seeking services for. So all of that is addressed in there. If the participant expresses an interest in training, the career planner is required to provide a participant with the ETPL state provider list in order to ensure the participant is made aware of all options before making a final decision for training. So even though the participant comes in and expresses they already know what they want to go to school for, maybe, the career planner is still obligated to share that ETPL list. If you don't know what that is, or you don't have a copy of it, talk to your supervisor and make sure that you are providing your potential students with that copy. And the final paragraph is acknowledging the application has been completed and paperwork signed with plans to meet again. And to wrap things up, a list of services provided and also a list of any future services to potentially be provided are documented. So here's what we're going to do. For clarification of this process and for training purposes, we're going to follow a fictional participant named Jess to see what the final results of filling in the blanks of these case notes would look like. So here's what it looks like when we're filling in all of Jess's information. Everything we need to know is right there. In this slide, we see the final results, just filling in the blanks. So what do we learn about her? She meets eligibility for 1A because she received SNAP benefits. She brought in all of her documentation. She's working part-time. She's a single parent, not a veteran. She's interested in training to become an LPN. Her basic skills screening tool reflects she does not have basic skills deficiencies, and there's no referrals planned at this time. She was also given a copy of the EPTL training provider list. See, that got documented. Application was completed and signatures obtained on all required documents. Follow-up appointment was scheduled and services provided were documented, as well as potential future services. All of that's all in there. Next screen. So the next one is a summary of assessment and testing. So documenting your summary of assessment and testing is what we've been talking about just recently, of getting into that assessment summary screen and making sure you're getting all of those. You've got to click on several different windows to make sure that you're getting all of that information in there. So where do you start with all this information? There's just so much. And how do you come to a conclusion of what kind of services you need? First thing you got to do is review the participant's assessment and test results. Develop a good understanding as to what the results and the scores mean. If you don't understand a result or a score, look for the interpretation within the assessment or the test narrative for clarification, or ask a supervisor for assistance. So it's so very important that you interpret the data correctly so you can begin to develop an employment training plan for the participant. So extract information from your assessment and testing results that you want to include in your comprehensive case note. This could include aptitude scores, interests, abilities, etc. You will be utilizing this information to start building your comprehensive assessment case note. You're going to review information you obtain from conducting an in-depth interview with your participant. This additional information will assist you in making determinations regarding your participant's service needs. Analyze the results of the assessments, test, and in-depth interview together so you have a complete picture. There must be a clear conclusion once you have reviewed it all. And this information will validate your decision-making processes regarding services you plan to enroll your participant in. You're going to create a comprehensive assessment case note based on all the data you've reviewed, and consider using the state summary of assessment and testing sample case note to ensure all relevant information is included. Again, can be a combination of your assessment summary screens and your case notes, but just make sure you're covering everything that is addressed in these samples. So all of this has to be completed first before you can even begin to create a summary case note of your findings. So next, remember, we are assessing a fictional participant named Jess who wants to be an LPN. So for training purposes, let's take a look at results of Jess's career scope to see how well she did and how well this plays an important role in determining whether she's suitable for training and whether her aptitude scores and test scores support her choice of enrollment into LPN training. So just because somebody wants to go to LPN training doesn't mean it's just an automatic. It has to be validated through your assessment and testing. So several LWIAs use CareerScope, but other LWIAs may use a similar type of aptitude and interest assessment, and that's okay. You can pull similar things out of yours that I'm going to be extracting out of this report. So in this screen, the first screen represents Jess's interest and also her aptitude scores. Remember, she wants to be an LPN, so keep that in mind as we review the results. I've highlighted her top 3 interests. Her highest score is humanitarian, which falls right in line with her interest in wanting to be a nurse. Second highest is scientific, and third is protective. So far, so good, as her interests line up with her desire to go to nursing. The second set of scores are Jess's aptitude scores. And one of the most critical scores in this section is her general learning ability score, which is 84, which is on the low end of average. This score is most closely tied to success in school, so it is very important to pay attention to this score. We don't want to set Jess up to fail, so we'll keep this score in the back of our minds as we analyze the rest of her results. The good news is she has a very high score in numerical aptitude, almost off the charts. This is very encouraging. So the second highest score is spatial aptitude, and the third is clerical perception, with both falling into average range. So far, Jess is looking pretty good, but we need to look at more information. Next slide. The next slide actually, this one has definitions of interest built into the test. So if you remember, her number 1 interest was humanitarian. Humanitarian is highlighted toward the bottom of the slide. So if you look over to the occupational column, all the way over to the right, you will see clearly that the word nurse is listed there under humanitarian. So that's looking pretty good. The next screen. This slide spells out the definition for Jess's aptitude score. So you see at the top where general learning ability aptitude is highlighted. The definition to the right of that states the ability to catch on, understand instructions, or ability to reason and make judgments, closely related to doing well in school. That's super important. That is why we're looking at the big picture for Jess, because she scores a little low within the average range. But for numerical reasoning, remember, she scored extremely high. So this is going to serve her well when training to become a nurse. And third, her score in clerical reasoning was average. And as you can see in the description, this is the ability to perceive pertinent detail in verbal or tabular material. Example would be to check work, order specifications for errors. This will serve her well when performing as a nurse. So now I'm feeling a little bit better about making the determination as to whether it is a good decision to send Jess in as a good candidate for nursing. Okay, the next screen. This next screen reflects recommendations for occupations based on Jess's current aptitudes, interests, and skill level. So the black dots represent occupations that she already has enough skills to do. She can perform these successfully in these types of jobs. But if you look at the far right column and count down, I think 3 spaces maybe, down from the top, you'll see that there is no black dot for nurses. And that is exactly what you need to see, as this represents the participant has a definite skills gap in what skills she currently has versus what she needs in order to become a nurse. So now you are most likely able to justify putting her into a training program based on all of the elements we just reviewed. The only other components to complete your assessment is to review the test scores for math and reading and the application, and look for any barriers during your in-depth interview that may prevent Jess from becoming a licensed practical nurse. For example, if she answered the application question yes for having a felony, that could put a huge glitch in your plans to enroll her in a medical program, and it could literally stop her in her tracks. Any training institution is going to allow her to attend the training, but she most likely would not be able to get a job as a nurse if she had certain kinds of felonies. So this is when you would have to redirect possibly, and have further discussions. There are waivers potentially that can be in place for a person with past legal issues, but you just want to be very, very careful that you're reviewing that application, making sure if a person has identified they have felonies and misdemeanors, that you are mindful of that, and that you have resolved some of those issues prior to enrolling them in a training program. So make sure you're looking at the whole picture, which includes analyzing assessments, test scores, reviewing answers from your interview, and making decisions on placing them in training. Next screen. Now that we've gathered all the pertinent information for this participant and analyzed results of assessment tests and in-depth interview, we're ready to start building our summary case note for assessment and testing, and also making our determination for services. So this is a sample fill in the blank, specifically designed for this purpose. And as you can see, results of assessment, testing, in-depth interview are addressed at the beginning of the case note. You'll also see references to identifying transferable skills, the completion of a budget worksheet, determination of suitable employment, identifying barriers, specific information about chosen training program, labor market information, documentation of services to be provided, and filing for financial aid. All of those are necessary to identify in a case note. So once we fill in the blank, next screen, you can see everything you'd ever want to know right here to be able to make a determination. So this slide is the result after filling in all the blanks, and all of your documentation is included, but most importantly, supports your decision to enroll Jess into a training program. It is a very detailed case note that meets federal and state requirements for completing a thorough assessment prior to enrollment into services. Next slide. The third sample is a fill in the blank for the development of an IEP. So this case note covers suitable employment, is either available or not available, barriers are addressed, training details are included, the setting of short and long-term goals, the inclusion of how the customer envisions his or her success after completion of training, listing of services, projected start end dates for training, estimated costs, and 90-day IEP reviews. So the next screen has all of those filled in. As you can see, everything that you need to know has been identified to make you feel more comfortable in the decision-making progress that you've had in determining if Jess should go to school or not. So if you can just spend the extra time to get these sample critical notes right in IWDS, it's going to go a long way to setting the tone for how the rest of your case notes will fall into place. They will be chronological, they will meet state and federal guidelines, and they will validate your decision-making processes for enrollment into services. And this way, no matter who reads your case notes, we will all now be able to follow your path in telling the story for each of your participants. Next slide. These slides just pertain to exit, and we harp on make sure you enter same-day case notes, make sure you enter same-day case notes, and we just say it over and over and over. So when you make the decision to exit somebody, they've gone through training, maybe they got a job, services are no longer going to be provided, then you do the exact opposite by not entering in same-day service case notes, because you want your last day of services to be your exit date. So how do you do this? What do you document during that 90-day time period? So if you aren't providing any services, let's say you're ready to exit, but you've got to leave them open for 90 days, you aren't providing anything, but you're still communicating with them, how are you going to document that? What do you need to write about? And what will you be documenting? So as soon as you make that determination that you're going to exit somebody, you can actually enroll them and exit in the service screen, and then follow up with your case notes that are general entries rather than same day service. Because every time you would enter a same day service after you plan to exit, it's going to knock out the last day of services and add it to something that you just added on a same day case note. You don't want to do that. If you truly are done with services, nothing else is going to be provided, and you're just getting through the last 90 days to make sure everything's wrapped up and they got a job and whatever may happen, you're only going to enter it in general case notes. So it doesn't mess around with your end dates. So some examples of follow-up services are verification of employment, inquiries on how to current job search, how employment is going, providing a job lead and let them know of a job fair, labor market information, providing referrals to other community resources, assistance with job search, resume development, general counseling about the workplace, and discussion of any work-related concerns. So just document for the 90 days under general case notes entry only, and then you're ready to exit. So remember, the exit date is going to be retroactive back to the last date of service. So there are some exclusions when you do not have to wait 90 days until exit, and they are incarceration for more than 90 days, medical issues, death, reservists called to active duty for more than 90 days, and youth that are in foster care. I think that's on the next screen. There we go. All right, we come to the end here. We've run a little bit over. The state can provide additional sample case notes upon request. The LWIA can also create their own. So remember, feel free to do that. Just make sure you have all the components in of everything that you need to be able to meet the criteria. Double check those assessment summary screens, folks. Double check and make sure that you're getting those done in there. We can create sample case notes. On the right, there's some things that you can create on your own, or we can assist you with that, whatever you prefer. But there's lots of help available to you. The next few screens are just, we're not going to go through them, but they are just, if you choose to make up sample case notes for job search assistance, work experience, these are just guides of what you need to have in the case note. If you choose to come up with a template, make sure you have all of these components in there if you're going to be doing that. So there's just a few samples for you in there, and we have made it to the end for questions and answers. So I don't know if anybody, are there any questions in the chat there? Or?
Yeah, I can read some off in the chat.
Okay, I'll try to answer them as best I can. If I don't know the answer, I'll just tell you I don't know the answer, and I will make sure that you get an answer, but I'll do my best here.
Okay. So there was one from Jenny. It was early on, but she was asking, I think, with general versus general case notes is like where you would put some of that, like in career planning or an IEP. Maybe she could offer clarification if she's still here.
Is Jenny still here?
She'll probably be there tomorrow. But
I'm here. I'm sorry. I was muted. I'm sorry,
Okay,
guys.
make sure I understand your question.
Well, it's both of us. Kate and I are both new. And I guess our question is in the 3 enrolled services that we've got them in, like the career planning, the comprehensive assessment, and the IEP, where would you put general versus where would you put same day?
No, it's
Okay. So
Or-
same day case notes are always entered in the service screen. You have to actually go to the service screen and click add additional episode to get that screen. And
On which
Okay.
one though? Like,
well, on
Here.
anything, like if you're
hold on.
providing
I'm sorry. Kate's back here asking questions too. It's kind of the same thing, but I think we're both asking two different questions. So
Well,
hold on.
I'm just confused about when would you put a same day service under a career planning service as opposed to when would you put it under the IEP? 'Cause that's just, I just can't figure out the difference between career planning and IEP. Like, what's the major differences in those?
Well, I mean, the IEP is a living document, so you're constantly updating that every 90 days. So when you are updating, if it doesn't need an actual update and you're just reviewing it, just put a general case note in that you reviewed the IEP and there's no changes. Okay. But you do want to document that in a case note about reviewing your IEPs, because if you don't say that you reviewed it, we don't know that you reviewed it. The only time you have to document it on the hard copy of the IEP is if you actually have updates,
A change.
modifications, or changes. Okay, then you would go in, if you actually have that, you would go into your service screen and you would click on development of an IEP and add an additional episode, and then you would document it there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just, what's the career planning part? Like, to me, I don't understand, like, what is that career planning service for?
It sounds like career planning and IEP are the same
Same thing.
thing. So like, why
Yeah.
are we having both of them?
No, the IEP is just your individual plan that you developed right when they came in, and as I said, it's live. So when you're providing case management, that's when you're going to go into a case management line and hit your same day service. Like if you're getting transportation in and you're calculating it and you're providing a service, you want to click on that line in your service screen to make sure that you are getting that end date updated in your screen so that it constantly shows that you are providing services. If you're just going into a general case note and you're not showing that you're providing services, then those end dates are going to remain the same in your service screen, and it's going to look like you haven't done anything with them. So, and we can talk more offline about that if you need more clarification. I'm happy to do that. But I'm not sure if I'm answering your question or not, but they are two different things where, it's only every 90 days or more if you need it to update or modify IEPs or even review them. We just want you to document that you're reviewing them. It's only when you're making changes would you go into that service screen. And I can work with you. I can call you separately and talk to you about it. I'm just not sure that by the look on your face, you're not understanding me.
We look like
understand.
this all the time. It's okay.
I just think I'm not
I
asking.
need to feel that way,
I don't-
so I'm
I
more
don't
than
think-
happy to give more information.
I
I may
don't
not
think
be able
you're
to
right.
answer it all right here.
I just don't think we're asking the question right. Because like I have notes on my desk that say, under career planning, it's all about the background. Under comprehensive assessment, it's all about their testing you did that day. And the IEP is basically their goal. And so like the case note, the sample case note that you give us for intake, like that tells all three. Like it tells your background, it tells what tests you gave them that day, it tells the goals that they have, like, if they're eligible. So I guess it sounds like to me like we're doing it multiple places, but do we just do it the one place?
You don't have to. I think that the issue that we found is if you are documenting all of those things in my sample case notes, can be documented for the most part in your assessment summary screen, but there's so many people across the state that aren't filling them out. They don't even know they're supposed to do it.
Oh.
So
We know that part.
That's okay.
We are doing that part. We are
Okay.
doing the assessment summary screen.
Okay, so you don't have to do it twice. If everything, if you're taking a look at that fill in the blank sample and you've addressed everything in your assessment summary screen, basically,
Mhm.
just put in your case notes, see assessment summary screen for details.
That
Okay.
works. That works
Yeah,
for me.
I don't want you doing it again. No.
I'm
not
doing
saying do it
plagiarism
twice.
on your case notes then, because I'm like copying and pasting your I'm plagiarizing you. Because I'm using your samples.
You can use my samples.
I'm
It-
using
it-
them.
Yeah, yeah. But I,
Okay,
what I meant by that, I'm sorry if I didn't make it clear, is just look at my sample and cross-reference it if you've already entered stuff in the assessment summary screen. Make sure that you're covering all of it.
okay,
Everything you're seeing on my samples, if you've got it covered already in the assessment summary screen, good,
okay,
because we don't
okay.
see that very often. But if
Okay.
you, yeah, just do a summary of a case note. And as I said, the more details you can put in the assessment summary screen, if you want to just say see assessment summary screen, we would expect everything in that sample case note to be in your assessment summary screen to meet the criteria. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
That makes sense. Thank
Oh,
you
All
for
right, you're welcome. Of
us
course.
being difficult.
Sure, sure. All right. And you
Um,
can always contact me if you have other questions, okay? It's
Thank you,
fine.
Robin. I
All right,
appreciate
you
it.
bet. Sure, of course.
speaking of assessment summary, does that also apply to youth as well?
To youth? Yeah,
Correct.
there are components, yes. I mean, y'all want to definitely get into your WIOA policy and reread the requirements for youth for that assessment summary screen. They're a little bit different than for your adults. So I would just encourage you to get back in there and read through it to understand which screens you're supposed to be filling out for who. But yes, youth do have requirements in there as well.
And then the last one is what talking about communication platforms. Are there any acceptable or unacceptable social media communication platforms?
I wouldn't say unacceptable. I mean, just again, be mindful of confidentiality and that's all I would say about that. I mean, we are so technology driven now that we communicate in all different ways. So I would say just almost anything is acceptable. Just be mindful of what you're putting out there again in the universe and just try to keep that in the forefront of your mind to keep things private.
Okay, it looks like, I don't know how much time you have, Robin. I want to be respectful of that, but if you got time, another one came in. When you state that attendance can be documented as same-day service, they receive mileage sheets every 2 weeks and add a same-day service under transportation. Should that be under the career planning same-day service, since we are calculating the amount and verifying attendance?
Yes, that's where you would go in and document every time you get it. Because if you're like for the sample case note where I said on the attendance, you know, that they just wrote received attendance in the body of the case note, that did not show any kind of action at all as to what service they provided. So that's why it's super important to, if you truly are just getting an attendance records and handed it off to somebody and you're not doing anything with it, that's a general case note where you can just write, received attendance today, however you want to say it. But if you are actually sitting down, checking to make sure that they attended all their classes, calculating their mileage reimbursement or childcare, or whatever it may be, give yourself credit for that, because that is a service where you're going into your career services and you are using that to say that you provided that service, and then that end date automatically updates. So it shows every time you go in there, every month you're getting an attendance form and calculating it, doing something with it. You definitely want to record it there.
One more from Monique, asking, I don't know, maybe these are examples that we didn't get to. Is there any suggestions for detailed verbiage that would cover comprehensive and specialized assessments?
Well, one of those case notes is very detailed about comprehensive assessments. I mean, that the fill in the blank assessment and testing sample is it's so thorough. It's almost overwhelming when you look at it. But what we're doing when we're creating them is trying to cover all the bases that policy drives us to do. I mean, these are all the things we should have been doing all along, but we weren't doing such a great job at it. So I just simply created a fill in the blank for you to just know, here's the things you need to address. It doesn't matter if you use my sample, you make up your own sample, as long as we can see it either in the assessment summary screen or in your case notes. I mean, definitely do it in your assessment summary screen because that is a requirement. But again, just summarize it in a case note or just say see assessment screen and we're going to know what you mean. But make sure that you're reviewing those sample case notes with the yellow highlight to make sure that you're addressing all of those things in your assessment summary, because that is also required. So I think, Monique, the assessment and testing sample case note is all you'd ever want to know or need. If there's something else that you're asking, I'd be happy to clarify.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just asking because our initial assessment, it kind of covers the same thing that the comprehensive assessment is asking for. So I wasn't sure if that verbiage or that information would be sufficient, because the comprehensive assessment is different from the assessment that is in the front of the application. So it's actually an enroll service. The comprehensive assessment is an enroll service, and it kind of mirrors the information that we use for our initial assessment. So I was just making sure that
well, I mean, I would say the one that I provided is the comprehensive level of assessment. Okay. So I would have to kind of look and see what your initial assessment looks like, because it sounds like what you're saying is you've got some of the components in there. It's just not as detailed as what I'm providing, but you have gotten some of them in. Is that what you're saying? Or are you asking, do you need to do it twice? I mean,
right. When I say initial assessment, basically, because it's like 3 different things that we're addressing. So the summary assessment, that's that part that's in the front part of the application. Okay. And then prior to application or anything, you are sitting down and providing a assessment as a career planner to determine eligibility and suitability. A lot of that information is gathered at that point. And so when we're putting in our case management information, that kind of entails all of what we've done to determine their eligibility. And then the comprehensive assessment kind of mirrors that same thing. And so that's what I was, wanting to know, if you're looking for something different, or is that information that we're gathering up front sufficient?
No, I mean, it sounds like that you've got a lot of the bases covered. Again, I would just recommend making sure you could do a secondary case note to add any additional information if you wanted to, that you haven't already covered. I don't want you to have to enter it in twice. I mean, typically we only see one comprehensive assessment, that's detailed in the case note. So, but if your local area is documented in a certain way, I would just go over that blank assessment case note sample, Monique, and just see if there's anything else in there that you would maybe need to, maybe modify your original assessment. I don't want you to change everything. I mean, you don't have to do, just because I'm providing it doesn't mean you have to use it. I just want to make sure that you understand that all of those highlighted places really need to be addressed somewhere. And how you do that is up to you, whether you are getting everything in your assessment summary screens, and then using your initial assessment, and we can find everything we need, that would be appropriate.
Okay. Well, this information has been great. Your teaching and instructions are always valuable. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good to see you, Monique.
You too.
Alicia has a follow-up on the transportation question.
Okay.
Since they can add that transportation support under career planning, do they also need to add it under transportation same day services? Because right now they just add it under the transportation service.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I apologize. I misspoke. It does go under transportation. Yeah. Usually you're using career planning for, you know, if you're fixing vouchers or you're actually doing an action, you'll go into that career planning line. So I apologize. Yes, if you are calculating transportation, you'll go into your transportation line. I'm sorry, I misspoke on that.
That's all the questions in the chat that I see. So, uh, thank you everyone for sticking with us. I know it went late. We got a late start. These will also be posted on WorkNet shortly. The recording of this video and the slides as well. If you have any questions, you can reach out to icSPS@ilstu.edu. And we can direct you in the right direction to get any of those questions answered. Robin, any closing thoughts before we end the recording?
I don't have anything else. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. And if you have any further questions or inquiries or want more details on case note samples, please reach me. I'm at robin.kralman, Kralman, at illinois.gov.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And you all have a great day.
Thank you. See you, everybody.